G'day legends, Blake here with another video, and today I want to talk all about my top 10 favourite aquarium cleaners. And I'm not talking about razor blades or sponges or anything like that. I'm talking about fish and other inhabitants that are going to do some of those janitorial tasks that do get pretty tedious. So let's jump straight into the video. Okay, so to get started, I'm going to mention two quick categories that these things are going to fall into. The first one's going to be surface and glass cleaning. The other one is going to be sort of nutrient control, cleaning up uneaten food and things like that. And out of this entire list, everything is going to do at least one of those two things, in some cases both. But in any case, I'd say that don't think that you can just go out and buy a fish and it will be an instant fix. You'll never have to do water changes or gravel vac or anything like that ever again. It's just simply not the case. And while some of these fish might be able to help with some of those duties, pick them because you actually like the fish, not just because they're going to do a job. Because at the end of the day, they are still animals, they do still have lives, and you are still going to have to care for them. So it's just a great bonus if it's a fish that you like, that is also going to help with your aquarium maintenance, rather than a fish that is going to help to do some maintenance, because it will never fully live up to your expectations on what it can actually achieve. So as long as you like them, I definitely recommend picking up anything on this list. And let's get started with number one. So number one on the list are Hillstream Loaches. Really cool alien looking stingray kind of fish, and great sucker mouth fish. So this is one that's going to be great for cleaning surfaces like wood and glass. They're going to go around all day just hoovering everything in the aquarium. They have an added bonus as well that they are an omnivore, so they are going to also clean up any uneaten food and mix up through the gravel and substrate as well. So they got that sort of two-pronged approach to their cleaning, which is fantastic. Out of all the options available, they are kind of one of the smaller versions, which are going to get up to about sort of 3 inches, 7 centimeters, around about there. And they're also tolerant to a wide variety of parameters, which make them great for community tanks. They're not going to really give anything any strife. You might find that inquisitive gouramis or angelfish might sort of peck at them occasionally, but they're pretty good at hiding as well, so they'll often scoot out of the way and be more wise in the future. One thing they do quite enjoy is high flow and high oxygen saturation, so do keep that in mind. You're not going to really be able to keep them in filterless aquariums and things like that. And the other thing to keep in mind are that Hillstream Loaches are scaleless fish, which means that any medicating you're going to do has to be at half strength. They're not really going to tolerate salt and heat too much either, so do keep those things in mind. But other than that, really fantastic fish and a great option for any fish keepers out there. One that is often debated in the fish keeping hobby is snails, but I think 3 types of snails in particular, maybe a fourth, are pond snails, ramshorn snails, Malaysian trumpet snails, and the fourth being nearite snails, are great options for tank maintenance and helping with that cleanup process. Pond snails and ramshorn snails are going to be really great for cleaning surfaces, as are nearite snails. Things like your glass and soft algae and stuff like that, definitely going to be under control with those 2 or 3 types of snails. Ramshorns and pond snails are going to procreate to the amount of food available in the aquarium. So for example, if you've got an entire container of fish food spare after feeding every single day, that's just going to waste in the aquarium, you'll probably have a lot of snails. If you have just as a little bit of extra food in there, you'll probably have a couple of snails. And if you feed exactly what your fish need, you might have 1 or 2 snails. So I think in that respect, they're a really great visual representation to newcomers to the hobby of how much food they should be feeding, because it is a bit of a guessing game early days. So I think that aspect is really good. Malaysian trumpet snails, they're a burrowing snail, so they're going to keep your substrate nice and aerated, sifted, make sure that there's not going to be a buildup of sulfur gases and things like that in the aquarium, but I don't really worry about that stuff too much anyway. But they're great for kind of mixing through the substrate and again eating any uneaten food and things like that. They are a bit of a pain to get rid of though, if you ever do want to try. Well, pretty much all of these snails are a bit of a pain to get rid of, so do keep that in mind. But for me, I find their benefits far outweigh their risks. In terms of risks, some people do believe that snails eat plants, but I've never found that to be the case. Basically, all 50 of my aquariums contain snails in one form or the other, and I've only ever found them really to eat dead or decaying plant matter. So really, they're only going to eat the stuff that's on the way out anyway, but some people think that they're sort of causing that, which I think they're just really cleaning it up afterwards. So in my experience with those particular snails, they're not really going to be ones to eat live plants. There are definitely snails that are going to eat live plants, such as rabbit snails, but that's not one that I'm going to talk about today. The only real key to keeping happy snails, because they are tolerant to most aquarium conditions, is to supplement with calcium. I like to use a bit of Calgary in the back of my aquariums, which is a common chicken supplement. Basically, it's just calcium heavy materials like crushed up bones and cuttlefish bones, things like that. And it will slowly dissolve into the water, or the snails can ingest it directly to make sure that they have happy, healthy shells. Next up on the list are Bristlenose Plecos. Really great community friendly option. They're not really gonna bother too many fish. It's mainly the slower ones that can sometimes be a victim to a Bristlenose Pleco, and it's only in cases where there's absolutely no more food left in the aquarium for them, in which case, at a last resort, they might attack a bit of a slime coat on some fish, and they do kind of get a bit of a taste of it. Outside of that, so long as you have plenty of algae or biofilm and supplement with algae wafers, or even a piece of zucchini or cucumber, you'll have some really happy, healthy Bristlenose Plecos. They grow up to about 6 or 8 inches, or about 15 centimeters or so, which makes them quite a nice big boisterous option. They come in some pretty decent colors like longfin varieties, albino or super red, and there are also some fancier ones like peppermint Bristlenose as well, all of which are going to do a great job at cleaning down the glass especially, and cleaning down surfaces. Again, Bristlenose are a scaleless fish, so they're not going to want a full dose of medicine if you do need to use some. They also don't really handle salt too well. They also don't really tolerate heat that well, but other than that, you can handle anything from African cichlids to your typical community tank. The other thing as well to keep in mind is they absolutely love eating Amazon swords. Outside of that, you're pretty much plant safe, but they love eating swords and occasionally crypts, so do keep that in mind. Next option is going to be shrimp. Shrimp are going to be great detritivores and eating up all of the uneaten food. In particular, cherry shrimp I'm recommending there as a nice hardy option that are, compatible with a lot of community tanks. Or amano shrimp / algae shrimp are going to be great for detritus control, but also they will clean up some of the softer hair and beard algae as well, which is a really nice bonus. Shrimp are also such crazy looking creatures. Remember, the first time you get shrimp, it will always fascinate you, and you'll stand there staring at your aquarium, just perplexed that these creatures can be kept in the home aquarium. Cherry shrimp come in all sorts of different colors. There's definitely a color choice for you, and realistically, they're super, super hardy once you get a colony going and maintained. Add shrimp into established aquariums always, so that there's plenty of available biofilm, so that they can continually graze on that and munch on that. They don't do too well on sort of the clinical, brand new setup aquariums. You don't just drop them in there and expect them to go ham on an algae wafer. It just doesn't really work like that. But if you have a nice healthy aquarium and you drop a few shrimp into it, they're really going to help to make sure that any excess food is under control. And they'll be a nice, great addition and something else that's interesting to the eye for anyone that's looking at your tank. Next up, an absolutely adorable catfish, Corydoras, everyone's favorite. Everyone loves Corydoras, and they're going to be a nice active option. And there's a color or pattern or size of Corydoras for you. So whether you enjoy the smaller ones like pygmy cories or Julia cories, or some larger cories like Brocas cories, even though they're not technically Corydoras anymore, but there are some large cories out there. Whether you like striped patterns like Trilineatus or spotted patterns like Sturbis, whether you like color like green laser or gold laser cories, there's definitely something out there for you. Cories are going to be spending all day shuffling around in the substrate, using their barbels to sift out any uneaten food. And if you want to keep Corydoras really, really happy, they absolutely love eating worms. So give them some freeze-dried or live blackworms, bloodworms, and they'll be very, very happy. pH 6 to 8, water temperature 72 to 80, which is about 22 to 27, massive range of of options available and great for any community tank. Again, they're really going to add a level of activity to the tank as well. So they're doing so much more than just being a janitor, which is why I absolutely love them. Keep in mind though, Corydoras are a schooling fish, so absolutely keep them in groups of 6 to 8 or more. And other than that, really, really bulletproof and an absolute no-brainer to add them into your tank. Next up, I'm going to talk about the Siamese algae eater. Definitely a controversial one, often feared, but in my experience, they're nothing but an absolute pleasure to keep. In particular, Siamese algae eaters are a rare fish that actually eats and demolishes blackbeard algae, which can be one of the most stubborn algae to try and get rid of. So just by doing that alone, they're definitely a winner in my books because I hate blackbeard algae. They get up to about 5 inches or so, which is around about sort of 12 centimeters, which means that you're going to want to keep them in aquariums of about 40 gallons and above, or 160 liters. Again, really adaptable to any kind of community tank water parameters, 6.5 to 7.5 pH, that kind of thing, and really compatible with most fish. The only thing about Siamese algae eaters that I really recommend keeping in mind is that they're excellent jumpers. They're kind of built like torpedoes, so make sure you have really tight fitting lids on there, otherwise they will find their way onto your floor and end up a nice piece of fish jerky, which nobody wants to see. A more compact option is the Otocinclus catfish. Great option for softer algae, and they're again kind of a sucker mouth type of fish, so they're great for cleaning down glass and other surfaces. Schooling fish, once again, so keep them in groups of 6 or more, and they'll be really happy. But the thing that people find often with Otocinclus is that they're shipped in pretty poorly, often under conditioned. So what I recommend doing is having sort of a bucket of water outdoors with a bunch of rocks in it out in the sun, which is going to purposefully be there to grow algae and biofilm. And that way, when your aquarium is spotless and polished clean, you can swap in a few rocks here and there to keep their diet nice and supplemented and make sure that they're happy and healthy. Otherwise, what happens is they'll do such a good job that they'll actually eat themselves out of food and then starve slowly to death. So that's mainly where people have issues keeping Otocinclus. Really community friendly. Again, they're not going to bother absolutely anything in any aquarium, though they are sometimes at risk of predation. So do keep in mind that they're still a very small fish and they might be a bit of a snack for some other fish. So yeah, make sure that you're not housing them with anything that has a big mouth or anything like that. The last 3 on this list are potentially a bit unconventional, but I'm going to go with them anyway. First one I'm going to mention is live blackworms. I absolutely love live blackworms as an option for keeping them in your substrate. They're going to be great for sort of moving around the substrate, eating up any uneaten food, keeping everything light and fluffy down there. And yeah, it's just awesome to have. If you go away on holidays, occasionally a blackworm is going to pop their head up out of the substrate and be consumed. So they're a great continuous live food source, especially if you go away for periods of time. As well as that, they're just an awesome live food to supplement the diet of your fish. So whether you're feeding them regularly or not, a fish is never going to say no to a live blackworm. So they're always going to love eating those guys. So for those reasons, I think every substrate should have live blackworms in it. There's really not too many negatives to it at all. And in my mind, it keeps it to be more towards like an ecosystem rather than a fish tank, which is always a benefit in my mind. So if you can, pick up yourself some little bag of live blackworms and you won't go wrong. I've done live blackworms in aqua soil, gravel, and everything else, and I've never found any substrate not to keep a little colony of live blackworms going, even when there's fish in the tank. Next one, live plants. Of course, you know I'm going to be an advocate for live plants, and if I've ever had an algae issue in a tank, it might sound like a bad idea, and sometimes it is, but usually my first port of call is reaching for a net full of duckweed and putting it in the tank. Duckweed, other floating plants, or other fast-growing plants like water wisteria or hornwort, really great options for sucking up all those nutrients, which is going to help to minimize that algae growth. So if your tank doesn't have live plants and it can support live plants, meaning that it's not going to have fish in there that are going to shred them up, then definitely go ahead and put them in there. Again, your tank's just going to have a lot more life to it, and it's going to be a lot easier to maintain, and you'll find that the nitrates are going to build up a lot more slow. So, you know, I'm always going to advocate for live plants. And the number one thing you can do is lots of maintenance. You know, if I've ever seen a tank that has heaps of algae in it or looks in a really poor condition and the fish are always getting sick, more often than not, it's because it's not getting regular maintenance. Although, you know, a lot of us don't like doing it, and sometimes we can drink some fish tank water by accident, and we have to do regular water changes, we have to do gravel vacuuming, and we have to manually remove algae. It's really annoying. I know that it's so easy to reach for chemicals, but they're just a band-aid fix, and you want to do what you can to solve the problem. So in that case, just make sure you're doing your regular maintenance. Clean that canister filter, squeeze out that sponge filter, and often that is going to be the simple fix rather than overstocking your aquarium with 100 different inhabitants, all with one little job, when at the end of the day, you and I know that sometimes we just have to get in there and do it. And to be honest, an hour later when you're sitting back looking at that tank, you can feel more proud and like you've achieved more by having done that work. So sometimes once you just get in and get it done, it's a whole lot easier in the long term. So there you go, guys. Those are the 10 of my favorite aquarium cleaners. Unfortunately, number one just has to be a human. If you did like the video, it always helps me out to smash like, hit subscribe, and all that fun stuff. If you got something that I left off the list, be sure to drop it down below for the future viewers. And other than that, hopefully you enjoy the rest of your day. Get in and do that maintenance that has been held off for too long. And I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.